Barefoot and dying, she looked at him and said, "I don't want to die a stranger." Wild West loved the desert stretched wide and silent under a pale sky. Dry wind moved slowly across the sand, carrying dust and memories that no one stayed long enough to hear. A lone rider moved through that silence. Caleb rode his horse with steady calm, eyes scanning the land he knew better than any map. He had lived alone for many years on a small ranch near the edge of the frontier, far from towns and far from people. Most travelers avoided this area. The land was harsh, water was scarce, and loneliness came quickly to those who were not strong enough to accept it. But Caleb did not fear silence. He had chosen it. The sun lowered toward the horizon, turning the sky orange and gold. Caleb had finished checking fences and water barrels, and now he was heading home. His ranch waited behind low hills, a simple wooden house with a small stable and wide open land around it. As he rode along a dry riverbed, something unusual caught his eye. At first he thought it was just a piece of cloth caught in the sand, but then the shape moved slightly. Caleb pulled the reins gently, slowing his horse. He leaned forward, watching carefully. Years of living alone had taught him to notice small changes in the land. There, lying half-hidden among dust and stones, was a person. He dismounted quickly but cautiously. The desert could be dangerous, and sometimes trouble wore the shape of weakness. As he approached, he saw a young woman lying on her side. Her feet were bare, cracked from walking across rough ground. Her clothes were torn and covered in dust. Her breathing was shallow, almost too quiet to hear. Caleb knelt beside her and checked for injuries. She felt warm but weak, like someone who had traveled too far without rest or water. He lifted her head slightly and offered a small canteen. At first, she did not respond. Then slowly, her eyes opened. They were unlike any eyes he had seen before, deep, tired, but filled with a strange kind of strength. She looked at him as if trying to understand whether he was real. Her voice came out soft and trembling. "I don't want to die a stranger." The words stopped him for a moment. He had heard many last words in his life, but these felt different, less about fear, more about longing. "You're not dying today," Caleb said quietly. His voice carried calm certainty. He helped her drink a little water. She coughed weakly but held onto consciousness. Without wasting time, he lifted her carefully onto his horse. She was light, almost fragile, but he could feel strength hidden beneath the weakness. The ride back to the ranch felt longer than usual. The sky darkened slowly, stars beginning to appear one by one. The woman rested against him, barely awake. As they rode, Caleb noticed something strange. On her wrist were faint lines, thin, metallic-looking patterns just beneath the skin. They were not scars exactly, and they did not look natural. For a moment, he thought it was just displaying tricks in the fading light, so he said nothing. When they finally reached the ranch, he carried her inside and placed her gently on the bed. The house was simple but clean. A small lantern filled the room with warm light. He cleaned her wounds carefully, using water and cloth. Most injuries were small cuts and bruises, but exhaustion had taken more from her than anything else. She fell asleep almost immediately. Caleb sat nearby for a while, watching quietly. He was not used to having another person in his home. The silence felt different now, not empty, but waiting. Outside, the night grew deep. Far beyond the hills, something moved silently across the sky, a faint light that disappeared as quickly as it came. Inside the ranch house, the woman slept for many hours. During the night, Caleb woke suddenly. He was not sure why at first, but then he noticed a soft glow coming from the bed. He stood slowly. The faint metallic lines on her wrist shimmered gently, like tiny stars hidden under her skin. The glow lasted only a few seconds before fading. Caleb rubbed his eyes, unsure if he had imagined it. Living alone for too long sometimes made people see things. He returned to his chair and waited until morning. When sunlight entered through the window, the woman stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, more aware now. "You're safe," Caleb said simply. She looked around the room, studying every detail, the wooden walls, the tools, the simple life around her. Her gaze returned to him, filled with quiet gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly. "You helped me." "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "Lyra." The name sounded unfamiliar but gentle. "I'm Caleb," he replied. She sat up slowly, testing her strength. Though still weak, she seemed stronger than the day before. Over the next hours, Caleb gave her food and water. She watched everything closely, as if learning how the world worked. She seemed fascinated by simple things, the way fire burned in the stove, the sound of wind against the walls, the way horses moved outside. Her speech was clear but slightly unusual, like someone who had learned language differently. "You walked far?" Caleb asked. She nodded. "Very far." He did not push for more answers. People carried their own stories, and sometimes silence was the best kindness. Days passed slowly. Lyra regained strength quickly, faster than Caleb expected. She tried to help around the ranch despite his protests. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky with deep colors, she stood outside watching the stars appear. "You look at them like you know them," Caleb said quietly. She smiled faintly but said nothing. Later that night, Caleb felt unease he could not explain. The desert felt different, too quiet, like the world was holding its breath. He stepped outside and looked toward the horizon. Far away, barely visible, a faint moving light crossed the sky. He watched until it disappeared. Inside the house, Lyra stood at the window, eyes fixed on the same direction. Fear touched her expression for the first time. Something was coming, and whatever it was searching. The morning sun rose slowly over the desert, spreading soft light across the ranch. Caleb stepped outside early, as he always did. The air felt calm, but something deep inside him told him that peace would not last long. Behind him, the ranch house door opened quietly. Lyra walked out, moving carefully but stronger than before. She had borrowed simple clothes from the ranch, and though they were not made for her, she wore them with quiet dignity. She looked toward the horizon first, scanning the sky before anything else. Caleb noticed. "You expecting someone?" he asked. She hesitated before answering. "Not someone, something." Caleb did not press further. He had learned long ago that people spoke when they were ready. Days passed with a strange mix of calm and tension. Lyra healed quickly. She helped feed the horses, carried water, and repaired small tools with surprising skill. Sometimes she watched Caleb closely as he worked, learning by observation rather than asking questions. Despite her strength, she remained cautious. Loud sounds made her turn sharply. Shadows at night made her uneasy. One evening, as they sat near the fire outside, Caleb noticed her staring at the stars again. "You look at them like they are home," he said. She took a long breath. "They are and they are not." Her answer left him silent. Later that night, distant lights moved again across the sky. Caleb saw them this time without doubt, small glowing shapes moving too smoothly to be birds or clouds. When he turned toward Lyra, she already knew he had seen them. "They are searching," she said quietly. "For you?" he asked. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she sat down slowly, as if carrying heavy memories. "Yes." The truth came out slowly, piece by piece. Lyra was not from this world. She came from far beyond the stars. Her people traveled between systems, studying life and protecting weaker civilizations from those who hunted for power. But others existed, hunters who captured beings like her for technology hidden inside their bodies. The faint metallic lines on her wrist were not scars. They were part of her living systems that helped her survive in different environments. "I escaped," she said softly. "I ran until I could not run anymore." Caleb listened quietly. The story sounded impossible, yet he had already seen things that made denial useless. "And now they want you back," he said. "Yes." Silence filled the space between them. Caleb looked toward the dark horizon and nodded slowly. "Then we make sure they don't take you." Lyra looked at him with surprise. "You believe me?" He shrugged lightly. "I believe what I see, and I saw fear in your eyes when those lights came." For the first time since arriving, Lyra smiled fully. Over the next days, tension grew. Caleb noticed strange tracks near the ranch, marks in the sand that did not belong to animals or people. Once a small metallic object hovered silently near the fence before disappearing when he approached. Lyra confirmed his fears. "Scouts," she said. They began preparing quietly. Caleb hid supplies and created escape paths through nearby hills. He showed Lyra how to ride horses faster across difficult terrain. She learned quickly, adapting with natural skill. Despite danger, moments of peace existed between them. One afternoon, Lyra watched Caleb repair a broken saddle. "You live alone by choice?" she asked. He paused before answering. "At first, no, now maybe yes." She sensed deeper pain but did not ask more. Instead, she shared something of herself. "I traveled with others once," she said, "but trust is difficult when people want what you are instead of who you are." Caleb understood that feeling more than he expected. One night, windstorms rolled across the desert. Sand moved like waves, hiding tracks and covering signs of movement. It gave them temporary protection. but the calm ended quickly. At dawn, a small mechanical drone appeared near the ranch, floating silently. Its surface reflected light like polished metal. Caleb grabbed his rifle instinctively, though he was unsure if it would even work against such technology. Lyra stepped forward carefully. "Do not shoot yet," she said. The drone scanned the area, emitting a faint humming sound. Small beams of light moved across the ground. Without warning, Lyra raised her hand. The faint lines on her wrist glowed briefly. A pulse of energy moved outward, invisible but powerful. The drone flickered, lost balance, and dropped into the sand, silent. Caleb stared at her in shock. "You said you were weak," he said. "I am," she replied. "Using energy like this drains me." She leaned slightly, breathing harder. He helped her sit down. That moment changed everything. The danger was no longer distant or uncertain. It had reached them. That evening, Caleb packed essential supplies. "We may have to leave quickly," he said. Lyra looked around the ranch, the only safe place she had known on this planet. "I don't want to bring destruction to your home," she said. He met her eyes firmly. "It stopped being just my home when you walked through that door." Her expression softened. As night fell, both stood outside watching the horizon. The sky looked peaceful, filled with stars, but they knew hidden eyes were searching. Far away beyond the mountains, a large shadow moved across the sky, silent and patient. The hunters were getting closer. And for the first time since she arrived, Lyra felt something stronger than fear. She felt hope, because she was no longer alone. The desert felt different that morning. The wind moved slower, carrying a strange heaviness through the air. Caleb noticed it immediately as he stepped outside the ranch house. Years of living close to nature had taught him to trust small changes. Something was wrong. Behind him, Lyra walked out quietly. She looked tired. Using her energy to stop the scout drone had drained her more than she admitted. "They are close," she said softly before he could ask. Caleb nodded. He had expected that answer. They moved quickly through their morning tasks, but every sound made them alert. The horses sensed danger too, shifting nervously inside the stable. By midday, the first sign appeared. A thin line of dust moved along the horizon, but it did not look like riders or animals. It moved too smoothly, too evenly. Lyra's face tightened. "Hunters," she whispered. Caleb guided her back inside the house. He closed the shutters halfway, leaving only small openings to watch through. "What do they look like?" he asked. "Not always the same," she replied. "They use machines more than bodies." That answer did not comfort him. Minutes later, small hovering shapes appeared above the desert. They moved silently, scanning the ground with beams of pale light. Their surfaces reflected the sun like mirrors. Caleb's hand rested on his rifle, though he knew it might not help much. "We cannot stay here long," Lyra said. He agreed but did not move immediately. The ranch was more than wood and land. It was his last connection to a life he once had. The drones passed over the ranch without stopping, continuing toward distant hills. "They are searching patterns," Lyra explained. "They will return." Caleb made a decision. "Then we leave before they do." They packed quickly, water, food, tools, blankets, and only what they could carry on horseback. Caleb moved with calm efficiency. Lyra watched him, surprised by his steady courage. "You are not afraid?" she asked. He paused before answering. "I am, but fear does not decide what I do." She nodded slowly, understanding. Before leaving, Caleb walked through the house one last time. His eyes moved across familiar objects, old tools, worn furniture, memories that lived in silence. He closed the door gently behind him. They rode toward the canyon lands where narrow paths and hidden trails gave them advantage. Caleb knew every rock and ridge there. As they traveled, Lyra looked back often. She felt guilt for bringing danger into his life. "You could have left me," she said quietly while riding beside him. "Maybe," he replied, "but that wouldn't be who I want to be." The simple answer stayed with her. Hours later, as the sun lowered, they reached the canyon entrance. Tall rock walls rose around them, creating shadows that hid movement from above. They rested briefly. Lyra leaned against a rock, breathing deeply. The faint lines under her skin flickered weakly. "You need rest," Caleb said. "We need distance more," she answered. Suddenly, a sharp humming sound echoed through the canyon. Both froze. Above them, a larger drone descended slowly. Its design was different, heavier, more aggressive. "They found us," Lyra whispered. Caleb guided his horse behind a large rock formation. He watched carefully, waiting for the right moment. The drone moved closer, scanning with bright beams of light. Lyra stepped forward. "No," Caleb said quickly. I must, she replied. The faint lines on her wrist began to glow. She raised her hand slowly, focusing her remaining energy. A soft wave moved outward, invisible but powerful. The drone shook violently, losing balance before crashing into the canyon floor. Silence followed. Lyra dropped to her knees, exhausted. Caleb rushed to her side, helping her stand. You cannot keep doing that, he said. I know, she whispered. They continued deeper into the canyon, moving faster now, but Caleb knew one destroyed drone meant others would come. As night approached, a storm gathered. Dark clouds rolled across the sky, bringing strong winds and sand. The storm hid their tracks but also made travel dangerous. They found shelter beneath a rock overhang. Inside the small space, they sat close to stay warm. The storm roared outside like an angry ocean. For the first time since leaving the ranch, they allowed themselves to breathe. Lyra looked at Caleb quietly. Why help me so much? She asked. He thought for a long moment. When I found you, he said slowly, you said you didn't want to die a stranger. I understood that more than you know. She waited for him to continue. I lost people once, he said softly. After that, I chose to live alone. It was easier, but meeting you changed something. Her eyes softened. I lived alone too, she said, traveling between worlds, never staying long enough to belong. The words hung between them, heavy but honest. Outside, lightning flashed across the sky. Suddenly, multiple lights appeared above the canyon, larger ships, silent and watching. Lyra's expression turned serious. They brought reinforcements, she said. Caleb tightened his grip on his rifle, though he knew this fight was larger than anything he had faced before. What's our next move? He asked. She looked toward the sky, determination replacing fear. We survive, she said, and then, he asked. A small, hopeful smile appeared on her face. Then maybe we stop running. The storm continued through the night as danger closed in around them. But inside the small shelter, two people who had once been strangers now faced the future together. The storm had passed, leaving the desert quiet again. The wind whispered over sand and rock, carrying a strange calm. Caleb and Lyra rode slowly through the canyon, alert to every sound, every shadow. The night sky was clear and stars sparkled like distant lanterns, yet both knew the peace would not last. Far above, the faint hum of ships lingered, distant but growing closer. Lyra's wrist flickered faintly, the lines glowing soft blue as she scanned the horizon. They're near, she whispered. Caleb nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on him. He had never imagined a life like this, protecting someone not from this world, someone who carried technology and mystery in her veins. Yet, the thought of leaving her alone, even for a moment, had never crossed his mind. They found a narrow pass where cliffs rose steeply on both sides. Caleb knew it well. If used correctly, it could be a trap. We stay here, he said. We can use the cliffs. They can't move freely in narrow spaces. Lyra's eyes studied him. You have a plan. He gave a small smile. I've lived with the land my whole life. Let me handle the tricks. You focus on what you can do. The first hunter drones appeared soon after. Their movements were precise, scanning with quiet efficiency. Caleb guided the horses behind large boulders while Lyra prepared to use her energy if needed. The drones moved closer, unaware of the trap awaiting them. Caleb had hidden ropes and weighted nets in strategic spots along the canyon floor. When the drones hovered too low, Caleb triggered the traps. The first drone toppled into the sand with a loud crash. Others swerved, confused. Lyra stepped forward, her glowing lines pulsing stronger. She used a controlled burst, enough to disable small sensors without fully draining herself. Caleb's eyes widened as he saw her strength. Careful, he shouted. You'll burn yourself out. I know, Lyra replied, teeth clenched, but we need time. The drones reeled and faltered, giving them a small window. Caleb spurred the horses forward along a hidden trail that wound sharply up the canyon walls. Lyra clung to the reins, moving with the rhythm of the horses. As they reached a ledge, the largest ship descended. Its surface reflected moonlight like liquid metal. It was unlike anything Caleb had seen. Silent, massive, and deadly, it hovered above the canyon floor. They brought the big one, Lyra said. Caleb studied the cliffside. We don't fight it head-on. We make them fall into their own trap. Lyra nodded, understanding instantly. Her trust in him had grown in the last days. She had seen him make decisions calmly, precisely, without panic. Now she believed in him, in both of them. Using the canyon walls, Caleb guided the ship's smaller drones into tight spaces where they could not maneuver. Lyra assisted, activating small pulses that disabled the drones temporarily. They moved like shadows, dodging and luring the hunters deeper into the canyon. Finally, they reached the canyon's narrowest point. Caleb triggered a large rock slide. Massive stones tumbled down, blocking the drones and forcing the larger ship to hover higher, losing stability. The ground trembled as dust rose, and the hunter's ship adjusted, trying to regain control. Lyra took a deep breath, her lines glowing bright. She focused energy through her hands, sending a wave that disrupted the ship's sensors. The ship hesitated, and in that moment a rescue vessel appeared over the horizon. Its design was elegant, unlike the hunter's machines. A soft hum filled the air as it descended closer. Lyra's eyes widened. "They came for me?" Caleb watched her carefully. "Then we get you home." The hunter's large ship recoiled, now trapped by their own drones and the canyon walls. The rescue vessel emitted a beam that disabled the enemy systems completely. One by one, the hunter's machines powered down, falling silently into the canyon floor. Lyra's energy drained rapidly, leaving her weak. Caleb guided her to the horses. "Almost there," he said softly. She leaned against him. I can't keep doing this." "You don't have to," Caleb reassured. "They'll take care of the rest." The rescue vessel landed carefully, opening a small ramp. Lyra turned toward Caleb. "You saved me," she said, her voice trembled. I owe you everything." Caleb shook his head. "You owe me nothing. I chose this. You didn't ask, but I wouldn't leave you." A silence passed between them. Outside the canyon, the desert seemed to breathe again. The danger had ended, but the night held a quiet anticipation. Lyra hesitated at the ramp. "I have a choice," she said. "I can leave now or stay." Caleb's heart raced. He did not know what she would decide. He had grown to care deeply for her in these short days filled with fear, trust, and unspoken connection. She said, looking toward the horizon, "I don't want to leave here, not yet." Caleb's chest tightened with relief and hope. "Then stay," he said simply. She smiled faintly, exhaustion giving way to warmth. Together, they walked back toward the horses. Lyra tested her strength, leaning on Caleb when needed. The rescue vessel waited silently, but Lyra did not board. Instead, she chose to remain on Earth with Caleb, on the ranch that had become a refuge for both. The next morning, the desert glowed softly under the sun. Caleb and Lyra worked together, rebuilding fences and repairing broken tools. The ranch felt alive again. The horses moved freely, the wind carried sound once more, and both felt the quiet peace of shared purpose. Lyra often looked at the sky, but now her eyes held no fear, only wonder. She felt belonging for the first time in years. Caleb watched her, realizing something he had not admitted even to himself. Life with her made the solitude he had cherished feel empty. Together, they found strength, courage, and connection. As the sun set, painting the sky in gold and orange, they sat on the porch of the ranch house. Lyra rested her hand lightly on Caleb's. "You saved me from more than hunters," she said softly. He smiled. "Then maybe you saved me too from being alone all these years." The desert stretched around them, vast and quiet, but no longer lonely. For Caleb and Lyra, the horizon was no longer a place of fear. It was full of possibility, of trust, and of hope. They had faced the unknown together, and in the end, neither were strangers anymore. As night fell, the stars sparkled brighter than ever. Lyra leaned against Caleb, and for the first time, they both felt at home. The wind whispered through the canyon, carrying a soft promise. No matter what came next, they would face it together. And for the first time, the desert did not feel empty. It felt alive.